The soul is the quintessential expression of feeling joy, sadness, sorrow, despair, passion, and love to the depths of our beings. And we hear and read and care for the soul, experience soul awakening, and we ask God to save our souls. We have soul music, soul dancing, soul singing, soul food. People talk about searching for their soul mates and healing their soul. We hear about people selling their soul to the devil and retrieving their soul from the devil. And yet people have a very little understanding that the soul is the power behind us. It's the expression of divine spirit. That's where we get our soul energy from. It's a very light energy, and we create all that we deny and all that we love. And we have the tools and inner resources to change what we need to change in our lives. So, and the purpose of the soul is to experience life to the fullest without any judgment, because the soul accepts us as we are, love us as we are, but not enough to leave us that way. Mm-hmm. So people experience their soul. It whispers to them in their joy and screams out at them in their pain. And people will experience power through their soul, and if they don't, they will be powerless. And if they experience acceptance and don't accept themselves as they are, then they will experience rejection. And it goes from compassion to judgment, abundance to poverty, dominion to domination, and dignity to shame. So the journey of the soul is to overcome the ego's needs, because the soul has its own ego as well. And I'm going to explain the ego of the soul. It's encouragement, gratitude, and observance. And the soul of the ego is envy, gratification, and obsession. So if anybody's experienced those, then they're not doing things for their higher good, because the soul will always push you towards a higher good. It'll bring people into your life that you may love or you may hate, but they're there to teach us something about ourselves, to help us on our path. And I'm a soul historian. I work with people when they really are stuck somewhere, because oftentimes I look at the history of the soul and they bring in patterns. Oftentimes they end up with the same people, repeating the same patterns, because their ego is very invested in it. So it's all about bringing it to a balance. And the soul has no time. It knows no gender as far as love goes. It just loves as it is. So I don't know if you have any questions around any of that.
Well, how would be a way for people to? I know they can connect with you and you can do a soul reading for them, but what could they be aware of, or what would be signs that they could see on their own of beginning to understand that?
Well, I think what they have to do, if they're not happy with what's going on in their life, they have to step back and ask themselves why. And they have to listen to that inner voice or pay attention to that red flag when it goes up. And they have to learn to respond to people rather than to react, because the reaction is all emotion, and the response is not personalizing it. Mm-hmm. If somebody, you have a conflict with somebody, and somebody is trying to blame them for something, absolutely, if they did something that hurt other people, then they need to own it. Mm-hmm. I have what you call train the brain, because it shifts the energy in the brain. If you name it, you claim it, you own it, you heal it, you let it go. Mm-hmm. And that has to be on a constant awareness. It's all about going to a higher level of awareness about our own behaviors and about why we do what we do, and still getting the same old results. It's like going down, it's like going down the path and keep falling into the hole. And it's like, wait a minute, try a different path.
Right.
And that's really what it's about. It's really about being very aware of who they are, accepting who they are, acknowledging who they are, honoring who they are, and healing what they need to heal. It's, when things happen in our lives and we cannot change what happens in our lives, we can only change our attitude towards it. Same with people. We can't change people, we just change our attitude towards them. And acknowledge that they're on their journey. Even though you may not agree with their journey, it's still their journey.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and not be drawn into it if it's not good for you. It's learning to do what's for the higher good. That's where the soul comes from. It constantly pushes us towards doing for the higher good, for our own higher good, as well as the people around us. It's practice. It's about having all the emotions. Doesn't mean you have to act on them. Nobody's saying you can't have them. You just don't have to act on them. And it's like thinking before you speak, because everything begins with a thought.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about what's the goal about saying certain things, or either that or have a good, honest-to-God fight and have some rules around it. with the I word, talk about how using I feel this way about it rather than you, because that puts everybody on the defense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the other piece about the soul is you're either, that's from spirit, you're either a feminine essence or you're a masculine essence. And a feminine essence processes everything through their emotional body, and masculine essence processes everything through their mental body. So now you have two people having a conversation. Well, I feel about this. Well, I think. So oftentimes they don't feel like they're validated because one is thinking and the other is feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But if they understand that, then they can teach each other how to think and feel and be able to listen to each other as well and give feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So, I teach people to do that and make them aware of it so that they have a better chance of being able to communicate effectively and respond rather than react and take responsibility rather than blame. If I'm working with somebody, I usually do about 20 years of therapy in an hour.
Right.
Yes, because especially if they're in front of me, because the energy is very powerful and it's very strong, and I'm able to pull things out of their soul's history and validate for them what it is to experience right there and then, whether it's in a relationship or with themselves. Because if we're in a relationship with somebody else, it teaches all about us. It teaches about ourselves. And it's about people focusing on, let's say, making a list of the troublesome parts of their lives. Now, lots of people have trauma in their lives, and lots of people have had very challenging lives. And like I said, we can't change that, but we most certainly can do an attitudinal adjustment on how you look at it. Mm-hmm. If you look at it from a different perspective, then it begins to change their energy and raises their vibrations. It's one of the biggest problems I find with people. They personalize everything. It's almost like we're a very self-centered human race because we think it's always about us when it's not. It's like when somebody comes along at you and they really are very upset and they really are angry, that tells you more about them than it does about you. But we think it's about us, so we start fighting with them. We become defensive and we start fighting with them, and it gets nowhere. Most of our soul's journey is about healing and then sharing that with people, because we cannot take people any further than we are ourselves.